All right. Yo, welcome to the Red Road East. I'm your host, Fierce Truth Seeker. The Red Road East is an indigenous TV program dedicated to archiving and preserving the history, legacy, and culture of the original peoples east of the Mississippi River and the Caribbean. Yeah, so not going to be too long today because I have a meeting that I have to attend in a little while. So just basically going to finish up from yesterday. Okay. So, hey, cousin, how's it going? Got Awanasa in the house. Awanasa, let me know how my audio is. Is it good? If it's good, put a one in the chat. If not, then let me know what's wrong with it. Okay. Okay, so it's good. All right, great. And give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second so we can get started. I'm gonna pull up, gonna queue up a couple of things here. Okay, and I'm gonna queue up the PowerPoint. Okay, and let's see. I'm gonna do this here. Let's see. Okay, and pull up this PowerPoint. Yeah, we missed you yesterday, Awanasa. Oh, thank you for sharing it on Facebook. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm gonna get right into it. I'm gonna keep it. We're gonna go about 40 minutes, so I'm gonna just get right into this here. So where we left off yesterday, we were talking about um, Walter Plecker and how he was basically tampering with people's records. Okay, doing the whole shuffle with the reclassifying Amerindians as Negroes and coloreds and things of that nature. Okay, so we were talking about how he was staunch in doing that, and he said that he was out to prove that the Indians were not Indians. And he said that all of the Virginia Indians were Negroes of Negro ancestry. Okay. And we already proved yesterday, based on the early accounts of the Virginia Indians, that they were already a dark skinned people before the coming of any Africans. Okay. So we'll pull up the next slide. So in this next slide, we started talking about how he based his determination of their Negro ancestry on Carter G. Woodson's Free Negro Heads of Families in the 1830s. Okay. And we started reading that yesterday. Okay. So give me 1 second. One second. So it says here, this report is the second in a series of documentary studies of the free Negro provided for by a grant which, under the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, obtained from the Laura Spelman Rockefeller Memorial in 1921. I think we read that part. We were further down. I'm not going to reread. Um, so basically, he was talking about how a lot of the quote unquote free Negroes, among them, you had a great amount of a great amount of them were slave holders themselves, the heads of plantations. Let me see if I can go down here and reread that part. Let me see. Yeah, it says here, as stated elsewhere, most of these free Negroes have been forgotten. For a person supposedly well informed in history, and surprised to learn today that about a half million, almost almost 1/7 of the Negroes of this country were free prior to the emancipation in 1865. It is hardly believed that a considerable number of Negroes were owners of slaves themselves, and in some cases controlled large plantations. As an introduction to this study of the despise of this no, as an introduction to this study of the despised group, the author deemed it wise to publish the statistics from the census of 1830. These facts are early enough to guide one in the study of the Negro in the patriarchal slavery period, and late enough to give an index to the situation of exploitation tended to debase also the free Negro. In 1830, moreover, the free Negroes had about reached their highest mark as a distinct class. As the author has stated elsewhere, the reaction which set in earlier in the century restricted their freedom and in many cases expelled them from the South. This census then evidently reports the names of a larger number of representative free Negroes than any other census prior to their debasement to a lower status or their migration from the South. This trek reached its highest point between 1830 and 1835. Most of the free Negroes in the North in 1830, therefore, had been there for some years. Okay, so what I want to add to that is the fact that even though he was basing Plecker, I'm talking about, was basing his determination of the Virginia Indians as being of Negro descent. What he didn't tell in his report was that a lot of the quote unquote free Negroes were also indigenous people. Okay. And we'll get into that another time. Okay. And I actually talked about that in previous lectures, but we're not going to get too heavy into that. But, I'm letting you know that, if anyone wants to get a reference on that, just go back to some of my previous lectures. Okay. And, yep, indeed. Indeed, Awanasa. Yep. So, what I want to look at now, hold on. Let's skip down. Yeah. So, what I want to look at now is this particular couple in Virginia, and one of the individuals that I had was going back and forth with in the Sonetta's chat. Um, his name was Cujo Adkins-Battle. Okay, and this particular couple here, um, they are their names are Jasper and Lori Battle. Okay, and I told him, I said, because he was, we were going back and forth. I said, brother, you don't even know your own history, you know. And I say, you need to study more. Anyway, it was him and this other guy named Scott One. But anyway, I was hoping they would have come in and get some of the smoke, but I guess they're running scared. But anyway, so we're looking at here, they were victims of the selective breeding practices that we were talking about yesterday among many of these tribes here on the East Coast. Okay. They, in order to get around a lot of the politics in terms of trying to be recognized, federally recognized, or even, recognized on any level, they had to fall into the stereotypical look of what an Indian is. So, they would do anything to get that recognition, even to the extent of throwing their own families under the bus, and disassociating themselves from the darker elements in their families. Okay. And these would be blood relatives that they would disassociate themselves with. And they would also do selective breeding practices, meaning, marry white at all costs. Okay. So now, if you look at this couple here, okay, this is Jasper Battle right here, the husband, and this is Lori Battle. Okay. Now, she is a quote unquote American Indian. Okay. And she is, they're standing in front of the Rappahannock Indian Baptist Church. Okay. And she's an Indian. Okay. And She was an outcast among the tribe because she married this brother here who they say is a black man. Okay. But now, if you look at her phenotype, okay, this particular phenotype, today they would consider her as quote unquote, um, like a mulatto, you know. They would call her a quote unquote black woman, with some type of mixture in there. You see what I'm saying? So you can see, just based on her phenotype, they are both of the same ethnic stock. The only difference is you can see where she's mixed with some type of Caucasian or some other, you know, uh, uh, type of lighter race. Okay, that gave her the lighter phenotype, and 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 possibly the hair. Okay, now this particular phenotype is not a mongoloid phenotype as among the plains Indians. Okay, so you can see obviously that they were marrying white more than likely. You see what I'm saying? And that's how the racial politics went. It's just like in the Hispanic community where they call themselves advancing the race by marrying white. Okay, and marrying light or anything that would lighten them up. Okay. And the other races around the world, whether it be Asian, East Indian, um, Arab, all these fixed mulatto races do the same thing. They have the same practices where they would make you think that the original inhabitants of these lands, whether it be Asia, whether it be India, whether it be the so-called Middle East, they would have you think, based on today's phenotype, that they are the original peoples. Okay, but that's not the case. These are modern day phenotypes, okay, of people who bred out, okay, to breed out the darker elements of their ancestry, okay, that Negroid base, which is the foundation and the original phenotype, okay, they practice selective breeding to get away from that, to create a hybrid look, of what is more acceptable in today's society. Okay, so moving forward, says here, in February 2004, the Rappahannock Indian Baptist Church was engulfed in the flames of controversy when a married couple, Lori and Jasper Battle, were denied membership. The Battles attempted to join the Tidy Brick Church in this hamlet at the convergence of King and Queen, Essex, and Caroline County, and did not foresee a problem. They visited the pastor, Reverend Clayton Costello, a member of the Mattaponi tribe located in King William County, Virginia. According to a Richmond Times Dispatch article, the Battles were cordially received by Reverend Costello. The Reverend prayed with the couple and thought their decision to join the church was a good idea. However, not everyone agreed. Shortly after the Battles met with Reverend Costello, they had another meeting, this time with Deacons John Fortune Jr. and Daniel Fortune of the Rappahannock tribe. According to Lori Battle, during a closed door meeting, the Fortunes told me they did not want us to join the church because I had married outside of my race. Lori, a Rappahannock Indian, was married to Jasper, an African American. To marry outside of your race is code for marrying black. While serving in the, by the way, this is coming from the book, um, That the Blood Stay Pure. Okay. While serving in the capacity of tribal chairman of the United Rappahannock Tribe, Daniel Fortune amended the membership criteria in 1981 to state that any person who is not of American Indian descent, in whole or part, in the United Rappahannock Tribe. Oh, I'm sorry. Any person who is, I missed the line, stated that, let me go back. While serving in the capacity of tribal chairman of the United Rappahannock Tribe, Daniel Fortune amended the tribal membership criteria in 1981 to state that any person who is not of American Indian descent, in part or in whole or in or part, Indian and white. Get that, okay? Anyone, any person who is not of American Indian descent, in whole or part, Indian and white now, and who applies for membership will not be accepted in the United Rappahannock Tribe. Ooh. So you see that the fierce truth seeker is not as ignorant and foolish as he may appear to you all. I'm not just making this up. Okay. You know, they say source up. Okay. Fierce truth seeker, that's all the fierce truth seeker does is source up. Okay. So here's documented proof of what I'm saying. Okay. It says any person who is not of American Indian descent, in whole or part, Indian and white, mind you, who applies for membership will not be accepted in the United Rappahannock Tribe. So that's proof of what I was saying, you know, as I spoke yesterday of the grafting process, okay, where they keep grafting that original gene, that original dark skin Negroid gene. They keep grafting it down and grafting it down until you come with this hybrid light, in some cases, damn near white phenotype, okay, until they perfect the portrait of today's Hollywood Indian, okay? But membership was extended to any person of American Indian descent, in whole or in part Indian and white, who marries a Rappahannock and applies for membership will be accepted into the tribe. While marrying white does not jeopardize one's tribal status, marriage, or even a common law relationship to an African American is a different matter altogether. An African American spouse, and again, these are colorable terms. This is not me speaking, this is the author of the book speaking. Okay. An African American spouse or significant other endangers one's tribal status and has forced many to forfeit tribal membership, despite having close relatives in leadership roles. As one Rappahannock informant stated, some of these folks being refused tribal cards have parents, grandparents, and other relatives who have served as tribal council members, yet because they married outside of their race, supposedly, I'm putting supposedly in myself, they are no longer seen as Rappahannock. I think that's wrong. End quote. Oh, wait, I missed my. Where are we? The same racialized policy that controls tribal membership also controls church membership. According to Susie Fortune, one of the church's founders, there had never been a black member in the entire 40-year history of the church. The church's constitution, while not forbidding people of other races to attend services, limits membership to those of Indian descent. The Constitution states that members do not believe in stressing integration or segregation. We welcome into our worship services all who have a longing to study, to learn of, and bring praise unto our Lord. We encourage all races of people to join and support the local church built and supported by their own race of people. In fact, the church indeed stressed segregation. The purpose of its organization in the early 1960s was to establish an exclusively Indian worship community to separate from its African American counterpart. St. Stephen's Baptist Church, where many of its members had previously attended. The Rappahannock tribe was the last of the tribes that would become a part of the state recognized tribal community to establish its own church as a part of the Indian cultural revitalization effort, which began during the waning years of the 19th century. Although the church's constitution encourages membership along racial lines, the Rappahannock Indian Baptist Church extends membership to whites. To whites. Let me say that again. To whites. As Lori Battle contended, if you're not going to let black people in the church, you're not going to let white people in the church, right? Well, they got white people in the church. Okay. So I'm not going to go much deeper into that. But yeah, because I have all these other slides because I thought people were, from some of these RBGs were going to come in here to get the smoke, but they're not here. So I don't need to read all of the rest of what I had there. And I will skip a few slides. Okay. Now, this is from one of the books that I sell on my table when I'm vending, called The Only Land They Knew. Okay. And it says here we have an instance where a full blooded Creek woman was reclassified as a Negro, but this was of her own choice. Okay. Now, you got some people in that RBG community who say, well, why would Indians reclassify themselves as Negro? Because sometimes it was more beneficial. That's why. Okay. It all depends. All right. Especially those who stayed behind and didn't get marched on the Trail of Tears. Okay. Another subject for another time. Let me see how many people we got today. We got a poor turnout today. Let's see how many people. Not a whole lot of people. I'm wasting my time, man. Anyway, let's see. I'll read through this real quick, and I thank Awanasa for joining in. Thank you, cuz. Um, yes, indeed, Awanasa. Those are other lighter skinned so called Negro people. Exactly. You know, they try to hide that though. Okay, you have the only land they knew. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. You need to read that book. That's probably the best book on the topic. Um, of course, you've got to cross-reference it with other books, but to me, it's probably the best book on that topic of quote unquote black Indians. Okay, more so than you know uh, most of these other books that are out there on that topic. You know, um, the book by Cats, um, the one that I was just reading from, and some of the others, you know. Anyway, let me see how long we've been on here. 30 minutes. I'm not gonna be on here much longer. Okay, so only land they knew, it says, despite the impression one might get from attending a contemporary course in Black Studies or a national convention of the Congress of American Indians, evidence is overwhelming that over the centuries, Africans and Indians did not remain separate, but for a long time associated and intermingled in various ways, influencing each other's development. In his old age, the venerable former slave Abraham related how when he was young, he had watched soldiers in Alabama round up Indians and march them to Oklahoma on their trail of tears. But Uncle Abe, who stayed behind, himself was part Indian. More dramatic was the experience of Susan, a full-blooded Creek, and her 6 children, all of whom belonged to Judge Lane in Nashville. A body of displaced Creeks removing to Oklahoma passed by the judge's house and spotted Susan. Realizing she was an Indian, they made signs for her to accompany them. One of her children accepted the offer. Susan herself was on the verge of joining them, but Judge Lane pleaded hard with her not to go. He told her the Indians ate raw meat and were often nearly starved. She decided to stay and thereby remained a Negro. Okay. Now, if she was a full blooded Creek, how is it that she could stay behind and pass herself off as a Negro? Okay. That's body bag right there. All right. So now I want to take a look at the Lovings. Okay. Mildred Loving, who was a Pamunkey Indian. Okay. It says here, and see here you have her marriage certificate. All right. So her grandson came out, and they had that movie that came out on the Lovings, and he was not too happy how they portrayed her as an African American. Okay. And so says here, I know during it says, I know during these during those times, there were only two colors, white and blacks, Mark Loving told NBC 12. But she was Native American. Both of her parents were Native Americans. And just like that, Mark breathed new life into the largely distorted history of eh, see, these are not his words. See, these, again, see, it says here, and just like that, Mark breathed new words into the largely distorted history of African and Native American intermixing. He didn't say anything about African and Native intermixing. See how they denationalize you, okay, by putting their own spin on what they feel you are instead of talking to the people and them telling you who you are. And that's the same thing that these census enumerators did when they went around. Okay. So, I mean, that's pretty much it, really. I mean, none of the None of those guys who were in that chat of Sonetters want to smoke. You know, they didn't show up. All right. So, you know, I can land my plane right there. All right. I thank everyone for joining in who joined in. I thank you, cousin Awanasa, for joining in. And yeah, exactly, Awanasa. That's right. Um, they never mentioned in the movie. That's right. They never mentioned in the movie that she was an Indian woman. Never. I saw the movie. Okay, I have the movie, and not once did they mention that. Yep. Yep. Oh, okay. Okay, the freedmen off topic, but can you explain the freedmen trade? Listen, okay, yeah. Right. So I meant was to talk about that too. The freedmen. So right. So check this out. So let me see. So reclassifications freedmen. So you have a lot of people running around, um, saying we should go up under freedmen and stuff like that. And I've been saying for years, I'm the first one who been telling people, you know, you don't want to go up under freedmen because you go up under freedmen, then that's saying that you are African and not of and not you're not indigenous. Okay, so and many people didn't believe what I'm saying. Okay, now I'm gonna prove to you that you don't know what you're talking about. Give me 1 second. Let me pull up. Let me see. Is it here? Let me see. No, it's not here. Hold on 1 second. Let me look for it. One, two. Let me see. Hold tight. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Da, 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 da. Okay, so it says here the Nero case offers numerous examples of this sentiment. Almost all all the plaintiffs in the case claimed that they had some Indian ancestry. Curtis Van said that his grandfather was a Cherokee by blood, and Cornelius Nave stated that his father was three-fourths Indian. Although I was unable to verify their statements with the Dawes records, I was able to locate Barry Nivens' birth, Barry Nivens's birth affidavit of 16th October 1903, which provided further clues to a confused system of racial classification. The affidavit showed that Nivens's father and mother were both citizens of the Cherokee Nation. The mother was a citizen by marriage and the father by blood, but the father was enrolled as a freedman. Okay, remember the Fierce Truth Seeker was the first one years ago to tell people, you know, stop running around here talking about you want to go up under freedmen. Okay, it says normally, he said normally, as in the case of Reverend Nero's birth affidavit, if a Cherokee citizen was listed on the freedman roll, then he or she was a citizen by adoption and not by blood. Period. Okay. Then says here, uh, give me 1 second. I'll find the part I wanted to. I'm just getting you to the meat and potatoes, not all the extra stuff. That's it. But let's see. Okay. Whiteness was taken for granted. Hegemonic identity that was no longer marked in any particular way. Using the analogy of mixing paint, a little red paint in a can of white will turn the whole thing pink, implying that one's whiteness is no longer culturally blank or racially pure. At the same time, pink is not red, and to some degree, a fourth racial category developed in Oklahoma. People of mixed European and Indian ancestry who were phenotypically and culturally ambiguous were usually classified as mixed bloods, but this was the exception rather than the rule. And the majority of individuals with multiracial identities were pushed into a single ancestry classification. The crucial point here is that the social and often political reaction to hybridity varied according to the components of each individual identity. Multiracial individuals with African ancestry were treated quantitatively different from those without it. This different, and this is the author's words, not mine. Okay. This different treatment was the result of a number of factors. Some were economic, as seen in the 1960 testimony of freedwoman Tessie Claggett Payne before the ICC. My grandfather and grandmother were on the full blood Creek roll. I'm sorry, the full blood Cherokee roll, not Creek, Cherokee roll. The 1880 roll. All of the children, there were six of them, got allotments, and my mother, and it happened to be in the Nawada oil pool, and they changed us to freedmen from the blood roll to the freedman roll, and that gave them access to handle or change the land or dispose of it, or we could dispose of it, but none of us ever sold it. It wasn't supposed to be taxable, but they sold it for taxes. In this instance, the racial classification, okay, yeah, um, It says, in this instance, the racial classification of this multiracial family changed between the 1880 rolls and the Dawes Commission rolls to open up their allotted land for grafter manipulation. Okay. And so that's pretty much how that went. There's a lot more to this here. We can get into all that other stuff, in another discussion. I didn't want to give all of my stuff out. I was hoping that, those RBGs would have came over here for the smoke, but they didn't want it. So, I'll save some of this other stuff for them if they ever decide and build the courage to come over here and debate that particular topic of the Virginia Indians, which was the topic. Okay. So anyway, I got to run. And also, I want to say that for anyone who is um, in the chat and wishes to, not just in the chat, but may be anyone who may be in YouTube land who may want to leave a donation, I'm going to leave the information here in the chat where you can do so. Give me 1 second. Cash app. Pay. This is the information here in the chat where you can do so. Okay. And I'm putting it up where you can see it on the screen. Okay, the Cash App is $KLove83 and PayPal AkiraLove07 @gmail.com. All right. So on that note, I'm gonna sign out, and I will say until the next time, Doda dog e. Yeah, you too, cuz. Ski. Definitely appreciate you joining in. Enjoy your Sunday as well.